Welcome to Brainstorm MTG. I'm ELD, and this is Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering. We are seeing two of the faster decks in the format as well, so expect this one to go by pretty quickly. Storm versus Burn. Don't blink. Burn is going to lead out here with one of the weakest openings it has of just Lava Spike to the face, but already putting some pressure on Storm's life total. Ideally, what you want to see out of Burn is Monastery Swiftspear, or Goblin Guide. Eidolon is a great turn 2 play or later. That eliminates a lot of the inevitability of Storm, really limiting the access to cantrips and spells that are just kind of trying to sculpt. Versus Eidolon, you pretty much have to take a line where you're all in because each of your spells is going to be doing 2 damage to you. Versus Eidolon, very often your line of victory is going to have to look something like playing a bunch of spells and then jamming a Tendrils. Occasionally you might need to play 2 Tendrils, and that is a very powerful way to sidestep Eidolon's ability. Of course, it does not trigger on the Storm copies. And there we go, Monastery Swiftspear with Chain Lightning. So a very aggressive turn 2 there, taking away 5 more damage, down to just 11. Could be facing down death this upcoming turn. If not, the following turn is almost certainly going to be all the time that Burn will allow Storm here. Tony, a member of the Old Guard, used to play at Scholars way back in the day. Probably 10 years or so ago. He was one of the younger players in the room back then, but now he comes in as one of the more experienced players thanks to all the years playing. We had a hiatus. He's been doing extremely well, typically going X1 or better. And starting out here with Ponder, one of the toughest matchups we actually have not played since he came back in, somehow avoiding each other these Wednesday night tournaments. And a pair of Ponders, likely setting up a explosive and lethal next turn. But will Tony be able to do 10 points of damage? Now there is the problem of having 2 dual lands in play, really turning on Tony's Price of Progress. Oh, but it looks like there's not going to be a pass turn. Rain of Filth as well. Storm count of 5. Looks like those lands are not only not going to get hit with Price of Progress, but they're going to fuel a potential win right now. Cabal Ritual, easy threshold once those dual lands go to the graveyard. So more than enough there. 5 black mana. Infernal. Cracking LED, that's all the mana in the world here. 6 mana and Past in Flames going to the graveyard. So Infernal's going to be able to grab a Cabal Ritual, making this Past in Flames extra saucy. 9 mana left. Going to use 5 for the flashback. Both Cabal Rituals here adds another 6, going back to 10, and that is definitely going to do it. Infernal with 8 mana, so you could actually Infernal Chain if it was necessary. Infernal into Infernal for extra Storm damage, but that is not necessary at all versus Storm. They don't have, versus Burn. They don't have any way of interacting here, and they've got plenty. They don't have enough life to make that play necessary. If they did have a ton of life, you could add on some extra Storm that way. But looks like Tony might have actually had the win the next turn. Storm just proving to be a turn faster, which is what it wants to do. This has got to be one of Burn's worst matchups. Between the 2 decks, Burn is certainly consistent in both deck building and in practice. If Storm falters, Burn does typically not have a very difficult time mopping things up. Unfortunately, Burn can't really do much to force Storm to falter. A deck like Blue-Red Delver, on the other hand, would be able to use cards like Daze and Force of Will to potentially disrupt a game-winning line. Burn is kind of at the mercy of the Storm player and the cards coming off of the top of their deck. Go ahead and mark that game 1 for Storm. Tony going to need to try and force a game 2 here on the play. Looks like he's thinking through which cards he wants part of his library. We see a Pithing Needle there. Not going to be very strong this matchup. It's fascinating to me when you're talking about the legacy deck building choices. Some of them don't matter a ton, but they're still very fun thought exercises. Things like which fetch lands to run in a deck. It's not something that typically matters, but in an instance like Storm, you definitely want to run 4 polluted deltas. You're going to be fetching your basic islands and your basic swamps. You'd run 8 polluted deltas if you could, but since you cannot, the other fetch lands are a question, and there's some competing theories on ways that you want to go there. For some people, they like to run lands that might signal another deck. Cards like Scalding Tarn can look like Sneak and Show. You may run Misty Rainforest, and you can also run the, let's see here, you got Scalding Misty, Flooded Strand, or Polluted Delta. The Flooded Strand doesn't really signal too much, Esper not being a thing anymore. But it's kind of a question of, do you want to try and signal some false information over to your opponent, or at least give them a clue that might steer them away from Storm? I don't particularly like that line. The other thing that you can do is you can try and play around cards like Pithing Needle, hoping that your opponent doesn't drop a needle and blanking all 4 of your fetch lands, so people may mix it up and kind of do a split amongst them. I personally like to run the 4 and 4 because of Infernal Tutor. So there are times where you might need to Infernal Tutor to get it out of your hand to build Storm, and you can actually Infernal for that land. It is a niche line, and it's typically an absolute train wreck of a game, but that can happen. So I'd kind of let your own deck dictate those type of decisions more than playing around cards like Pithing Needle on the other side of the table. But regardless, now we're finally back to the action here. We've got Goblin Guide coming in, swinging 2 damage, and he is revealing a Ponder there, giving Tony a little bit of information, doing his job, but not going to push in for damage this time. Chain of Vapor is going to bounce him post-combat, so that slows things down considerably, and there's Eidolon. Now that is a card certainly worthy of Chain of Vapor or any type of removal. He is a huge problem. But it looks like we've got Fatal Push to take care of the Eidolon. There it is, getting him out of there. That is a main phase Fatal Push just to allow for this Ponder to come in. Looks like more Fatal Push. Probably my biggest criticism of the way that Storm can play is how the sideboard cards interact with your main plan. And very often you'll have cards like Fatal Push that can really create a clunky situation with Infernal Tutor, where you need to either discard them to LED, or they just are not able to be cast either quick enough or at all. There are times where a burn player might not draw creatures and you're stuck sitting on Fatal Push, and then they just burn you out. So that is one of my main criticisms compared to the more control-oriented decks. And to have more cards to help with card selection. Cards like Jace the Mind Sculptor, Jack Faden. And there we go. Fistful of Burn for Tony. Probe losing 2 life. This is the last game on the channel for Legacy with Storm. See if it is a successful farewell. Their Fatal Push in hand. Not great versus that hand full of burn. But we looks like we're going to be going for something here. We've got Cabal, Ritual, Lotus Petal. The earlier cantrip turns into 10 goblins. So we've got 2 turns here. Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, Fire Blast. And that'll do it. So 10 goblins not going to be enough. And Tony taking game 2. Exactly what Burn is capable of doing against those suboptimal draws. Empty the Warren's not an ideal win condition versus Burn. It's at least a full turn slower than just straight up killing them with tendrils. Even when we're talking about having a fully lethal turn, once you start getting into the 10 or 12 goblin token range, now you have to swing a couple of times. If they have blockers, that can actually turn into 3 more turns, and each one of those turns, Burn can be top decking cards that can do 4 or more damage to your face. Looks like an Empty the Warrens in hand. Like a first turn empty. Guess we'll see if this is going to be fast enough. On the play, Lotus Petal, Cabal, Ritual, Empty. So 8 goblins. Again, not an ideal opening, but versus Burn, this could be good enough. See what he has. Typically not going to have sweepers. This is really just a race at this point. And Goblin Guide not going to be able to swing in. Now, just with that single Goblin Guide, 8 goblins is not really going to be able to get the job done. It's going to be 7 damage, then 6, then 5. That's without any goblins being removed. Losing a goblin each turn, not going to get the job done. Any burn or any other blockers actually pushes you outside of lethal range. And there's Eidolon. So now it would be 2 goblins per turn that would be taken away. So that is a standstill right now. Now each of Tony's burn spells going to do 2 to him and then 3 or more to me. And Pithing Needle coming down. That is likely not going to be worth it. Fetching in response. So now he's not really going to have a good card that he can name. The fetch land would have been an interesting card to name. Looks like he's actually naming Lion's Eye Diamond, which is an error. For sure, that's not a card that you want to be naming. Lion's Eye Diamond has a mana ability, so Pithing Needle not going to shut it down. There's Ponder. Paying 2 life. Infernal Tutor and Ad Nauseam in hand, it looks like. Lion's Eye Diamond, if he could stop it, would definitely be a good call. With that Infernal Tutor in hand, likely to be looking at playing Lion's Eye Diamond, Infernal Tutor, and grabbing a Tendrils of Agony. And Tony's going to need to be very careful here with his life total. He could really remove a lot of the work that I need to do if he's too aggressive with his burn spells. And there's the LED. And Tony just has a ton of mana here. Now those fetch lands would put him to 13. And push through 6 damage to get him to 7. We would not be able to play all 4 burn spells. This is a really tense game state here. Tony thinking this through. Both players, some serious decisions to make here. Now Fire Blast will not trigger. Eidolon only hitting non-creature spells that cost 3 or less. I'm sorry, any spell. So Eidolon and Goblin Guide both blocking. It looks like Storm's going to make a play here. Tony has 9 life to work with. The ball ritual going to 9. Infernal Tutor. Tracking LED. At 7 life here. Can Tony do 7 damage? We see a Fire Blast. Are those Chain Lightnings? Can he not respond at instant speed? Tendrils being fired off here. This is going to put Tony at 1 and lock him out of the game. And it looks like an Eidolon, a Fire Blast, a Pyro Blast. It looks like these are not burn spells. He just needed a single Lightning Bolt here. Lightning Bolt plus Fire Blast. Looks like this is going to do it. Price of Progress is only 2 damage. Price of Progress and Fire Blast. And that's going to do it. He does not have enough instant speed burn. Basics on the side of Storm, preventing that lethal. If one of those basics was a dual land, Tony has it. But those basics provided a little bit of shelter from Price of Progress. And Tony learns the lesson the hard way with that Pithing Needle in Storm's last outing with Gitaxian Probe. That's all for this one. If you enjoyed the video, please help grow the channel by subscribing. You'll be notified when we upload new videos like Fast Effect, Double Speed Magic with commentary, or Untapped, our raw tournament gameplay. Thanks for watching.